Fearless.
Chase.
Bold.
Following.
Courageous.
Search. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Marshall.
And this is
Undaunted
Pursuit. Hey. All right, testing. Can you hear me?
1, 2, 3, testing. I can hear you.
Awesome. Hey, everything come out okay?
Hey, yeah, I'm good.
Good. Oh, shoot, man. Well, yeah, busy. I forgot. So we had it warmed up a little bit today. I forgot I had the heater on, and I think one of the episodes I talked about this heater that I have in here doesn't cycle on and off through.
Oh.
You can't just set the temperature and forget about it. It just runs. So it is hotter than blazes in here. I almost thought about leaving the door open, but it's so dang windy out there that I can hear doors slamming and things that the kids have left open just flapping in the wind and everything. So, anyway, the house is actually finally, after getting that table and our bed frame out, is finally looking a bit bare.
Good deal. That's where you want it to be.
Right?
Get her looking better.
So, anyway, getting closer. And then once we get settled in down there in Arkansas, that we'll try and, I don't know, maybe, I think I talked about it. Oh, man, when did I talk about it? Anyway, one of the episodes about maybe having to podcast out of the car for a little while. The van is going to be the new podcast studio for a while until we'll see how that works out. But we need like a middle meeting place that we're so close to being able to meet in person to do these things. It's not going to be long. Not going to be long now.
My Toyota 4Runner in the very back, it's got a 120 plug. But it has to be the vehicle has to be running in order for it to work. But I'd have to look at the limitations on that. But it might work. You never know.
Yeah. Well, and to be real honest with you, this might be our last. So this one will come out. This episode will drop on Monday, the 6th, and so we may not have one. We may not be able to do a podcast next week just because, or however it works out. Maybe I can stack a couple. Maybe I can do another one. But either way, we may or may not have a podcast next week. But, so we'll see how that works out.
Got a lot going on.
Oh, yeah. I know it. Okay, hey, hold on. I forgot to welcome everybody to Undaunted Pursuit podcast. We're glad you guys are joining us. So
welcome back, y'all.
Now that we got that out of the way. Yeah. But so heck, we'll see how this turns out. Pretty much everything is in storage. We made the last big run, and so how was the city council meeting tonight?
It was good. We voted to hire somebody on, a new employee, and we moved somebody into another position and voted against some stuff. And just trying to keep this bad boy running around here.
Heck yeah, gotta love politicking.
Oh, politicking for sure.
Yeah. Let's see here. So, other than the excitement of us trying to get things packed up in 2 weeks, that's the gist of my. That's the only thing been on my mind. We had a happy belated Halloween to everybody. We had, or should I say, Kids Candy Day, dude. Every year we come back with a good 5-10 pounds of candy. and it's this year was exceptionally good. A lot of dang good candy this year. Um, yeah, it was a pretty good Halloween for them kids.
we we just hung out here at the house. Of course, just my wife and I. We carved a couple pumpkins, and surprisingly, we actually had I'd say 10 to 15 kids stop by, which in this little town is quite a few.
Yeah,
Um, which it's fun. We enjoy handing out candy to the kids, and it's fun to get a little bit of action. I don't know how many people in this town actually have the lights on for kids to come by. And I would imagine there's a whole lot, but so we try to have some fun with that. But we actually went to Branson, Missouri last week. My younger brother
mm-hmm.
Matthew got married, so my wife and I were in his wedding. She was one of the bridesmaids, and I was one of the groomsmen. And man, it was a great time. We
Yep.
had a lot of fun, and we had the bachelor and bachelorette party, and the girls went wine tasting, and we went ziplining, and went and had a good steak dinner. Um,
Sweet.
yeah, we ziplined over Taneycomo, so that was fun. Um, but it was a good time. We enjoyed ourselves, saw the family, caught up on some lost time, and celebrated a great couple. It was a sweet little wedding, about 40, 50 people roughly. But it was really intimate. It was really nice. We had a really good time, so it was fun, and it gave us some time to get away and have like a little mini
Good.
vacation. But yeah, it was good stuff.
Sweet. Yeah, it looked pretty nice from the pictures that I saw. So it looked like it was a nice little
Hmm.
setup, and
Yeah.
yep. But well, good deal. Good deal. I'm glad you guys got home safe and sound. And now here we are in Luke chapter 23. We're 2 chapters away from finishing this out. So
Hmm.
um, yeah, we're getting into the trial of Jesus, and of course,
Hmm.
like we said before, it's not fun to talk about, but it's we know what the end game is, and that's worth celebrating too. So,
Yep.
you want to get into it?
Let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah. So where we left off the last time, Marshall, was that Jesus had just been brought before the Sanhedrin, and of course now they've mocked him, they've spit on him, they've beat
Yep.
him, and now they're bringing him before Pontius Pilate. And that's
Yeah.
where chapter 23 picks up. Is here the whole assembly brought him up before Pilate. So they
Hmm.
bring him to Pilate, and they're explaining to Pilate. They're bringing their accusations to him, and a lot of it has to do with blasphemy and everything like that. So Pilate's looking at Jesus like and at this time you can imagine that Jesus is he's bloody. He uh, he really doesn't look like much of a threat for that matter to Pilate. So he's looking at him, and he's not really concerned about blasphemy. Okay. Oh, and then backing up, did you know that the Jewish leaders the Roman government did not allow the Jewish leaders of the time to execute someone? So that's why this assembly had to be. That's why Jesus had to be brought before this Roman governor. Or yeah, was he? Yeah, he was. Hold on, let me. Either way, Pilate. He would be the governor, right? Because then
Let's see.
yeah, he was a Roman governor over the whole region of Judea.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I mean,
Because we're going to see later
Pilate.
on, he brings them to Herod.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as we get to
Go ahead.
reading, you're gonna see that um, Pilate and Herod, neither one of them ended up finding any basis for charge. They both didn't find him guilty for anything, and that's something we'll read as we get into this. Um, which I find that to be interesting. I find that to be interesting, and because it ends up as we get further into this. As Jesus is before Pontius Pilate and before Herod, it's the people, it's the crowds that are cheering and
Mm-hmm.
yelling and whatnot to kill him, that want him crucified. Pilate and Herod were like, I don't find him guilty. Like this guy didn't do anything, and not that we can see. Um, so
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting as we get into this.
Well, it's funny that these Roman leaders, uh, they're not stupid people.
No.
And they can see that these accusations were so bizarre,
Hmm.
because look at in verse 2 that he says that we found this man misleading and perverting our nation and forbidding us to pay taxes to Caesar.
Hmm.
Everybody knew that wasn't true.
Well, yeah, that's what I
He
was gonna.
never said that.
Yeah, because he
And-
said it at some point. He said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's. So he never, when these people were saying that he
yeah,
opposed his payment taxes to Caesar, I'm like, that's not true. He did not. He said the exact opposite.
right. Yeah, and so what's funny is that not funny, but um, these guys, these Roman governors, both Pontius Pilate and Herod, they're so concerned with they're more concerned about their ultimately in the end. You will see that they're more concerned with their political. Uh, uh, what they look like politically, how they appear to the people, and rather than being fair and just. We're going
Yeah,
to see
they're
that later on down the road.
they're worried about that, but they're also worried about um, an outbreak happening because of the amount of Jews and stuff that are
Yeah.
around. They don't want, because as we get into it, it's during the time of Passover, so they don't want to cause rioting and cause a big commotion and a big issue. Because Jesus has a lot of followers at this point, and so if they start doing all this, there's going
Mm-hmm.
to be a lot of issues going on, a lot of big problems, and Caesar told him, told Pilate and them, hey, don't let this happen. He warned them, don't do
Yeah.
this. Kind
Yeah.
of.
So when looking at Jesus in the, go ahead.
No, I would say we're kind of jumping around a little bit here, guys.
That's okay. Yeah, we're gonna do that a lot, but it's seeing Jesus in the condition that he was in, Pilate's like, he's not a threat to him. These guys are. I'm not really concerned with their accusations. So so these Jewish leaders get really angry,
Mhm.
and they're trying to throw out these accusations that are going to cause Pilate to do something about it. What's going to pose the biggest threat?
Mhm.
Oh, Jesus is claiming to be king. What are you going to do about it, Pilate? And he's like, "Are you?" He asked Jesus, "Are you king?" And and Jesus says, "Yeah, it is just as you say." He pretty much simply answers it, just like he did earlier in Luke, that we talked about earlier, and when he answers the Pharisees.
Mhm. Yeah.
But then he still doesn't find. That's when he says he finds no guilt in it, and then so he recognizes this, and he's like, you know what, let's just where's Jesus from again? Galilee. Let's
Mhm.
send him to Herod. So he's just gonna push this off because, like you said, Marshall, that's where you were going. There's all these crowds. I don't
Mhm.
want. He's like, I don't want to have to deal with this uprising if there's going to be an uprising.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's send him to Herod.
Absolutely.
So okay, so then that's where he had. Which, if you remember, when we were early on in our study, that Herod has been wanting to see Jesus, and it's not because Herod believes in what Jesus was doing, or that he simply wants to see Jesus for a show.
Mhm.
He practically thinks that Jesus is um, does miracles just as an act.
Yeah. Herod was hoping to see Jesus do something, to perform a miracle. That's what he was hoping for, and Jesus didn't. Jesus didn't do it. And it actually says in Luke 23, if you read Luke 23:8, it says, when Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform some miracle. He plied with him many questions, but Jesus, and I find this interesting, Jesus gave him no answer.
Yeah.
Just didn't answer. And I read that and I was like, why? Why didn't Jesus give him an answer? Why wasn't God like, like, I don't know what he would say, but he just gave no answer. And I don't know if he'd be like, because you don't deserve it. I don't know what he'd say. but he just was just quiet, silence.
Well, because it's because Jesus knows your heart, right? He
Right. Yeah.
knew what whatever questions were being asked weren't out of sincerity. They weren't out of all he wanted was a show. That's it.
Hmm. Yep.
And so Jesus wasn't going to it's like talking to a brick wall. You're not going to change. He knew that he wasn't going to change Herod's mind. And he knew that
Absolutely.
Herod wasn't going to change his mind, as far as what he wanted. The only reason he wanted to see Jesus was for that. And so
Yeah.
I'm sure that's how the questioning went. So
Right.
it was pointless. It was like I'm not gonna argue with a brick wall. We've you know,
Oh yeah.
and ultimately we knew that Jesus had to. There wasn't anything he was going to say to that was going to change the outcome of why Jesus came. So
Right.
it was, why did he have to answer him?
Right.
So okay, so they dressed him in a robe and sent him back. So of course, there's Herod's true heart is okay. Well, if you're not going to perform for me, then back to Pilate you go. I don't know what to do with
Yeah.
this guy. That's that's all. That's how that went down.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course, it's just it's yeah, it's just terrible because they'd said early on they ridiculed him, they dressed him in a gorgeous robe, um, they mocked and ridiculed him. Okay, so, I'm sure there was some striking of some sort that happened through there, but we're speculating there, but.
Hmm.
So, and then said, verse 12 there goes on to say, now that that very day Herod and Pilate became friends with each other. Before this, they had been enemies. That's interesting.
That is interesting. I read that and I was like, so before y'all are enemies, and now Jesus comes along, and essentially, the way I saw it was Jesus brought y'all together. Like, so maybe some good came out of it. I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess it depends on how you look at it.
Well, I mean, that's what Jesus does, right? Jesus
Hmm.
uses a bad situation to, and that's how we can apply this is even during this time, two people that are enemies can be
Hmm.
friends. It's still you still see some fragment of um, how to love your neighbor, and
Yeah.
even though because Herod was the Jewish governor and
Hmm.
Pilate was the Roman governor,
Hmm.
it was really kind of confusing how they allowed each other to coexist.
Right.
How the Romans and the Jewish people coexisted like that because they all had different. It's interesting.
Yeah. It really is.
So they bring him back to Pilate.
Hmm.
Do you have something to say?
No, no. I was getting ready to just keep reading on. Like, you're good.
Yeah. So they send him back to Pilate, and Pilate's like, you brought this man before me as one who corrupts and entices the people to rebellion. He's like, after I've talked to him, I've found no guilt in this man regarding the charges which you make against him. Nor has Herod, for he had sent him back to us, and indeed he has done nothing to deserve death.
Hmm.
So he was prepared to release Jesus.
Yeah.
He's like, there is nothing legally, and this is how crooked of a trial that this has been because there is, they are absolutely finding no guilt.
Yeah, it does say that I guess Pilate punishes him and then releases him. I don't know what the extent of that punishment was, but there was some form of punishment there.
Yeah, and let's see here. Now I wanted to go back because is it Matthew that says that? You remember talking? You remember what is that? Where he's talking about I don't know what was it. There was Pilate's wife had a dream. I can't remember which gospel it talks about this, but Pilate's wife had a dream and begged Pilate not to. That's why Pilate is trying to
Yeah,
um,
I remember. I remember
release him.
that.
Do
I
you
don't
remember
remember
that?
where it was. I do. Man, I can't remember that for the life of me.
Let's see here. Jesus for Pilate. I can't remember. I can't remember where it's at because okay. So yeah, it's in John
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
chapter 18.
Yeah. Yeah. He disregards the good advice of his wife. Um. Yeah. Mm,
Yeah. Chapter 18, starting in verse 28, Pilate came to them. What is the accusation you bring against this man? They answered, if he were not a criminal, he would not have been handed him over to you for judgment. Then Pilate said, take him for yourselves and judge him according to your own law. And we're not permitted to put anyone to death. And this was to fulfill the word which Jesus had spoken to indicate by what manner of death he was going to die. So Pilate went to the Praetorium again and called Jesus, asked, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus replied, are you saying this on your own initiative, or did others tell you about me? Pilate says to him, I'm not a Jew, am I? Your own people and their chief priests handed you over to me. What have you done that is worthy of death? And then this is where Jesus tells him. So this is where we get, um, at least we get this line of questioning out of John between Pilate and Jesus here. And he says, my kingdom is not of this world, nor does it have an origin in this world. If my kingdom were of
mm-hmm.
this world, my servants would be fighting hard to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this world. So he says, then you are a king. And you said, you say correctly that I am king.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, maybe it's not even in that, is it?
No, I was trying to look it up.
Golly, I
And
can't remember where it's at. I'm pretty sure it's somewhere in there for the sake of time. Um, for the sake of time, Pilate was told, his wife told him, had a dream, and was told that he needs to, which is why you see him wash his hands. And so let's see here. Because the crowd continues to push the fact that it was customary of that time. Going back to Luke chapter
maybe
23, it
was
was
it
customary of the time to.
was it Matthew 27? It says 27:19 says while Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of
Yes,
him."
that's it. Matthew.
Yep. Matthew
Yeah,
19, 27,
that's
19. So
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, sorry, I was on a mission.
but either way, what does that show you? That God is, he's always providing a way out of temptation. There
Mhm.
was a way out, and maybe I could be wrong, I guess, but that's kind of what I take from that. But then the relentless crowd, here he has his way out, but yet he still sees an opportunity to save face with the
Mhm.
people, to save his political. He's more concerned with his political standpoint than he is with his own um, spiritual salvation.
Mhm.
And what does he do? These people keep saying, well, he's going to make a big show about washing his hands, like that Jesus's blood is not on his hands, but in reality, it is.
Mhm.
You took a obviously guilty man, which of course during the time it was customary to release during this Passover. Yeah, it was obligated to release them one prisoner at the feast. So during this time, they released a prisoner. Well,
Mhm.
he takes an obviously uh, guilty prisoner up against an obviously innocent man,
Mhm.
Jesus, and then pretty much pretends to wash his hands clean of this. No, the blood is still on your hands.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
But the crowd kept pushing him, and so he's going to try and save face. So Pilate pronounced the sentence. They released Barabbas to him. Let's see. Yep, he releases Barabbas to them, and he pronounces a sentence in verse 24, and he released the man, and they were asking for who had been thrown into the prison for insurrection and murder. So he hands over this murderer
Yeah.
and sentences Jesus to death.
I mean, that was frustrating me when I was reading that. I'm like, the crowd's sitting here wanting to release Barabbas, who was incited for murder, or he was in prison for insurrection and murder. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, what's wrong with you people? You got a guy who is innocent, who's been proven innocent on two accounts, and yet you want to release a known insurrection and a person who committed insurrection and a murderer? Like, really?
The
Like,
whole
this doesn't even
reason
make
that you were
sense.
even the whole reason you were entertaining this idea because you didn't want insurrection, and now you're
Hmm.
releasing an insurrectionist.
Yeah. Like, calling the kettle black. I mean, come on, guys. Like, where's the common sense here? I don't know. It just kind of made my blood boil a little bit. And I've read that a million times growing up, but just when I was reading it last night, I'm just like, wait, what's wrong with you people?
Yeah. But then again, on the other hand, you sit and you think as you read through this story, if not them, then who else? Because it had to happen this way. It was prophesied long ago that this is what Jesus was came to this earth in the flesh to do for our sins. There is a blood penalty for our sins, and thank the Lord that He took it on.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, 100% correct. I mean, it definitely had to happen. But I think I was thinking from this maybe the viewpoint of the disciples, because throughout this whole entire thing, the disciples just didn't. They was just kind of going with the flow, as Jesus was leading them and teaching them. And I'm sure at this point they were probably. I would think a lot of them would be feeling the same way, just like angry and frustrated with these crowds doing this. Like, what's wrong with you guys? And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I don't know how present they were in this time because people knew who they were. So they were probably kind of hiding out a little bit.
yeah. Okay, so to make light of an incredibly dark situation, here we are. They're leading Jesus away,
Hmm.
and they seize the Roman soldiers seize this man. I'm going to read verse 26 here.
Hmm.
When they led him away, they seized a man, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming into the city from the country, and placed on him the cross to carry behind Jesus. Okay, so here's this guy that he's just coming into the city, probably wanting to mind his own business and thinking that it was like, what the heck is going on? And it's like, you carry his cross.
Hmm.
How would what would that guy be like? Oh man.
I mean, could you imagine? I mean, what if what if that guy was a believer of Jesus? Just what if? Um, it really
Yeah.
doesn't say a whole lot about the guy, but could you imagine knowing who he is and carrying that cross? I, I don't know.
Yeah.
I, I mean, I think I would. I don't know. I maybe kind of humbled. Maybe like, what is going on? Like, I'm not worthy. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, part of you thinks that, you're carrying this death tool, and just think about it. Every time you denounce Christ, well, I don't know. Hold on. That's not going to come out right. Never mind. Scratch that.
No,
Anyway, I was
no,
I was
no. You're
thinking of
good.
something to go along with that, but hey,
If you don't mind,
it wasn't going to sound. Go ahead.
no, you're fine. I wanted to read 27 into 28, and they give it a kind of an explanation for 27 through 29 because it's actually pretty interesting stuff if you're good with that.
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
All right, so 27 it says a large number of people followed him, including women who mourned and wailed for him. And this is, guys, listen to this. As Jesus turned and said to them, daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, weep for yourselves and for your children. For the time will come when you will say, blessed are the barren women, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed. Then they will say to the mountains, fall on
Mm.
us, and the hills cover us. So I want to explain that. So Luke alone mentions that the tears of Jewish women, of the Jewish women, while Jesus was being led through the streets to his execution. Jesus told them not to weep for him, but for themselves. And the reason why is because Jesus knew that in only about 40 years, Jerusalem and the temple would be destroyed by the Romans. So Jesus was, um, Jesus knew it was coming. The bad things that were to come. So in a
Yeah.
way, he was kind of prophesying there. But and I was reading that last time. That was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, that is interesting. Sorry, I keep hearing that wind is just going nuts tonight. Okay, so obviously Luke kind of he kind of paraphrases it, and then here we are doing a podcast, paraphrasing it even more. I want to kind of continue to give that disclaimer that you need to go through and read this for yourselves, and you need to read it throughout all the gospels, because the different viewpoints from all these apostles,
hmm
um, they're different, and there's different little takeaways from everyone. Now, I was trying to look up while you were talking, and which is why I didn't have a lot to say even after what you had just read, because I was looking it up, because it's like, at what point did Jesus get whipped, before or after? And obviously, Luke kind of skipped all of that,
Yeah, he just
skipped
bypassed it. The gory
yeah.
stuff.
So it would have been, so before, yeah, as part of the execution, there they made they would whip you with a cat of nine tails. It was a whip with shards of glass and metal and bone, and tied into the end of it, that would just, it would rip flesh off of, when every time it would dig in when it hit your back or wherever they were whipping, and would just rip chunks of meat.
So I wonder if you go back to Luke 23, 16, where Pilate says, therefore I will punish him and then release him. I wonder if in that moment, if that punishment, I wonder if that was part of that punishment when he was whipped and all that kind of stuff. I wonder if that's when that happened. Did it happen in Pilate's hands?
No, 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 no. It would have been a Roman thing. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Okay.
it was a Roman. It was part of the Roman execution. And then, mockingly, because they called him, because he is the King of Kings.
hmm
Um, Mockingly, they made him a crown of thorns too, which is not stated here in Luke,
Yeah.
but they fashioned out a crown of thorns and placed it on his head, or it mashed it down on his head, actually, to make it even more painful. And all the pictures that we see, you ever gotten stuck with a stinking locust thorn? I mean, because that's what it looked like it was made out of, was locust thorns.
I've been
They
stuck with
hurt.
they do. I've been stuck with the mesquite thorn, which they can be just as long as those are, and some of those thorns have like a almost like a poison in
Venom.
the tip of the thorns. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they sting. Like once you get stuck, it stings, and it's like it doesn't just go away. It just kind of sits there, and there's not much you
Mm-hmm.
can do about it until it does wear off. It's miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. And so all of this has happened, and now he's carrying the cross, and they're
hmm
going up to Golgotha, the
Yep.
skull, the place called the skull,
hmm
where he's going to be crucified. That's in verse 33. Um, and Luke just goes into it. He says they came to a place called the skull, where they crucified him and the criminals, one on the right and one on the left. Jesus was saying, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. We're also going to see that same wording in Acts. If you were to proceed through the New Testament, as you get done with the Gospels, you're going to see during the stoning of Stephen, say the same
hmm
thing. They're
Yeah.
blinded. They're blinded by evil, and they don't know what they're doing. They're out of their minds.
Yeah.
They cast lots, dividing his clothes, and then of course the rulers. they ridicule him. They were sitting there the whole time, telling him to save yourself. If you're so
Hmm.
high and mighty, save yourself. But that's not
Yeah.
what he came to do.
Yeah. At some point, um, and I think you're about to get there, but it says they offered him wine vinegar, and I've heard about it
Mm-hmm.
before, but I wasn't exactly sure what that was, so I got to look at it. But it says the wine vinegar that was given to
Hyssop.
yeah, so yeah, the wine vinegar that was given to Jesus on the cross was called gall, which was a plant, which was like a wormwood or myrrh. So they mixed the gall with the
Oh,
wine,
okay.
and it was used to give the criminals a pain relief. So it was essentially a pain reliever, is what it
Yeah.
was, because being hung up on the cross, obviously you're in excruciating pain and you just can't get away from. So that's what that was. I wasn't. I'd heard about that
Yep.
before, but I was like, I'm going to dig a little bit and see what that's about. But I think that's interesting that
Well, yeah. Go ahead. You finish your thought. I was agreeing with you.
no, I think it's interesting that they did that. Because like you said, they're sitting there mocking him and saying all these things, but yet they have the tiny bit of mercy, I guess you can say, to give these criminals. Well, Jesus wasn't a criminal, but in typical history of them doing, they give the criminals the that mixture to give them some sort of a pain relief. And I'm like, honestly, I wouldn't think they would care. I think, that's why I'm kind of shocked that they even did
Yeah.
that.
I was too, because you always heard that it was vinegar, and growing up as a kid, hearing these stories, as a kid, you're like, oh man, they gave him vinegar. So not only was it bad enough that you spit on him, that you beat him, that you nailed him to a cross, that you whipped his back, that you put a crown of thorns, and now you're going to try and make him drink vinegar while he's dying on the
Yeah,
cross. You know,
yeah.
you I thought as a kid, until I grew up and we really started digging into God's word, that it was just another form of mockery or punishment, is what you always thought it was. And then it's like,
Hmm.
oh well, it was actually supposed to be some sort of pain reliever.
Hmm.
And then again, maybe it was some sort of pain reliever. Maybe there was a hidden agenda there, that it's like, oh, let's relieve your pain so that you die slower. Or
Right,
maybe it was, maybe there wasn't any type of mercy with it, or maybe it was just that to make them die slower. Who knows?
right. To relieve the pain so you can endure it longer and suffer more.
Yeah, so more suffering.
Hmm.
And so here's what the Jesus is going through all of this, and for a guy that had probably maybe not even maybe heard just whispers of what Jesus had been doing the past 3 years, here's a criminal on one of his sides, and you got one criminal saying, well, mocking him along with the rest of the others, but then the other criminal on the other side, he says, do you not fear God, since you're under the same sentence of condemnation? And he says, he pretty much says, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
Hmm.
Ain't that something? He
Grace.
recognizes Jesus as the Messiah while they are all sitting there nailed to a cross, and he recognizes Jesus as that Jesus is the Messiah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And what I find even more amazing than that is the grace that Jesus had for that criminal, because the man recognized who he was. The respect that criminal had for Jesus was amazing in that moment. But the grace that Jesus had for him, the love that Jesus had for him, and what I love about this is clearly this guy, I don't know that maybe he was a Christian. I wouldn't think that he was, but there wasn't like this official accepting Jesus into as your personal Lord and Savior into your heart. There was no
Mm-mm.
baptism for this man. It was raw, in the midst of all the junk being hung, being killed. And he says that to Jesus, and Jesus turns over to him and says, I tell you the truth, today you will be with me in paradise. I'm just like, if that doesn't give you chills and show how
Yep.
loving and graceful God Jesus is, I don't know what does.
He meets you right where you're at, just like he's done throughout his whole ministry, just like he did with Zacchaeus, just like he did with the woman at the well, just like he's doing right now, hanging on the cross, being right where you're at. Doesn't matter. Jesus, he said, and then did he say that you had to be baptized? No, you do that as a profession of faith. But this guy immediately recognized Jesus as the Messiah, and you will be with me in paradise.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, paradise.
Mm. I love it. I don't know. I just yeah, it's good. It's a breath of fresh air in the midst of all that turmoil. You know.
Yeah, yep. And then here's the thing: this was quite when Jesus died on the cross. It was quite the show. It was quite the spectacle.
Oh yeah.
Not that I would have wanted to see it, but the things that transpired when Jesus died on the cross, Luke doesn't even touch what happened. The veil. So the Holy of Holies would have been a big tapestry of sorts that was.
Hmm.
It would have been impossible for any natural disaster, anything to tear that veil in half from top to bottom,
Oh yeah.
unless it was God. So there
Yeah.
is that thing ripping the way it did was because it is finished. That's when he says, or he cries out, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And having said
Hmm.
this, he breathed his last breath. Once that's done, he's taken all the sin upon himself, and the veil to the Holy of Holies is ripped open, new covenant, and now we can all come to God because Jesus paid that price. There
Hmm.
was no mediate. Jesus is the mediator,
Yeah. And you
and
know what?
so that's the significance of that veil ripping.
Yeah, and what I like about just after Jesus took his last breath, that centurion, after he saw what happened, he praised God and he said, "Surely this was a righteous man." So in that moment, I'm sure that
Yep.
centurion was the amount of guilt I think the amount of guilt he felt right then was just like after like Aaron was just talking about, after the veil was torn, the temple was destroyed, after all these things that happened, um, this centurion's like, there's this guy's got to be a righteous. This guy's got to be somebody. This has never happened. I've hung and killed many people on a cross, and this has never happened before.
Yeah. Well, who I don't see why there wouldn't be oh man, how do I phrase that? How there couldn't be an unbeliever there after seeing what went down, and that this type of Roman execution was popular of that time. This is how they did it, and for the sun to be blotted out, the veil to be torn. There was an earthquake, and if you go back and read in Matthew, a bunch of people got resurrected that day. There
Mm-hmm.
was zombies coming up out of the ground. I mean, what happened? I have a whole lot of questions about that I really need to dig into. Um, but all this stuff happened. I don't know how you could be living in that time and not believe that Christ was the Messiah.
Well, it's like, not to sound morbid, uh, and not that I want to see Jesus crucified, because that's a horrible thing. Um, but to see all the events that took place in that moment would be quite the eye opener, and it could be extremely life changing. Like, knowing what I know now, if I could go back in time and see that moment, like the change of life and hearts that would be done in that moment, like knowing what I know, um, would be insane. I mean, that would be such an insane, surreal moment.
Yeah. Yep. It would. It really would. So now that this is all taking place, Jesus died on the cross, and and he died on his terms.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember that death on the cross was a painful, slow death, and he died faster than what normally people would die on the cross. If I think I've heard that before, and whatever, but um, that just goes to show that's his, that's how great he is. That's how much control he has. He never lost control. That he had full control over what he came to do from the beginning to the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit.
Yep. And then he breathed his last breath.
Mm-hmm.
So here we're going to look at now. They're going to bury him in the tomb, and you can go read it. It's a man named Joseph, popular name, not the same Joseph from Mary and Joseph or however, but so he goes and asks Pilate for the body of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so he receives a permission, and they take Jesus's body down, wrap him in burial cloth, which would have been just a white cloth,
Mm-hmm.
and they lay him in a tomb cut into a rock where no one had yet been laid. So it's a pristine tomb, brand new tomb. They lay Jesus in there, and verse 54, it was a day of preparation for the Sabbath, and the Sabbath was dawning. Now the women who had come with him from Galilee followed closely and saw the tomb and how his body was laid. And this is important. You remember this because here's these women, and we're going to get into that next week or whenever the next podcast is. On if you were to fabricate this story, well, yeah, I'll just touch on it right now a little bit. If you were to fabricate this story, you wouldn't use women because women were looked down upon. They weren't. It was just the way that time period was, and so the fact that Luke is pointing out that here's these women following close by. Of course, women probably would have been part of that process, the burial process.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get into that next week the next time we do this, verse 20, or in chapter 24. They went back, they prepared spices and ointments and sweet-smelling herbs, and on the Sabbath day they rested in accordance with the commandment forbidding work. So they laid Jesus in the tomb, and they shut it up.
So I want to go back for just a second, and I want to touch on that man Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know this till I read this, but Joseph, he was Joseph of Arimathea. He was a wealthy and honored member of the Jewish council. He was also, I didn't know this, he was a secret disciple of Jesus. It talks about it in John 19:38. The disciples who had publicly followed Jesus fled. But Joseph boldly took a stand that could cost him dearly. He cared enough about Jesus to ask for his body so he could give him a proper burial. I did not know that, and I got to reading this. I was looking down there, the little explanation. I was like, I think that's important. I didn't know that. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I did not know that at all. And with as busy as things have been here lately, packing and running like a chicken with their heads cut off. I didn't have a chance to really dig deep into this, and I'm going to try and do better for 24 because that's exciting because we're getting into the resurrection when we come back.
Yeah,
and not that. There's plenty of really good resources to check out, plenty of other really good podcasts to listen to on the unjust trial of Jesus and the crucifixion and all that. It's not something I like to talk about, my Savior being crucified, but there's something a lot worth talking about, his resurrection, and something to look forward to in our resurrection with him and when he's coming back. And so anyway, that's that finishes out chapter 23 for us, Marshall.
Mm-hmm. No, it's all good stuff. It's all really important stuff. It's tough to talk about, but it is vital. It is very important to talk about his crucifixion. So, but yeah.
Yep. So, all right. Well, it's time to go. I got some more work to do, and it's getting late for you. So, guys, thanks for listening to this week's episode. Share this with somebody this week if you're liking what you're hearing. make sure you go on to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, iTunes, whatever it is. Give us a good rating. Give us a good review. Help boost those scores up. Help get this podcast noticed. And on to you, Marshall.
Hey, guys, like we always say, if you have questions, concerns, comments, love to hear from you guys. You can go to mail@undauntedpursuit.com. Email us there. Of course, you can reach us by all the social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Um, Maybe I'm missing one. I don't know. YouTube, guys, you can listen to us on YouTube. We don't have any video up there, but there is audio, just like you hear on the podcast. Look, we love to hear from you guys. Love to get your messages, comments. And we just appreciate you guys very much for listening to us, giving us the time of day. And more importantly, don't ever forget to share, like, follow, subscribe. But out of all that, share this with anybody you know and don't know, because the goal here is to get the gospel of Jesus Christ out to all the ends of the earth, which is what he's called us to do. So please help us, help you, help Jesus get the word out.
Yep. And check the show notes here for this week's artist. I don't know exactly who it's going to be. Like I said, been busy, but there will be some sort of music at the end of this episode. We love highlighting these artists. Go check them out. Go download their stuff. Go follow them on their social media pages. And they're all really great artists who we have on here. So check them out. And I think that's about it. So, guys, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Adios.
Lord, here I am, a broken man in need of your healing hand. Forgive my sin, backsliding. Remind me of who I am in you. I've taken as much as I can. I need you to lift me up again, 'cause only you can take what is broken, and make it new. When it feels this hopeless, there's nowhere else that I can turn. There's nothing that I can do. There's only you. There's only you. This heavy weight of my mistakes feels like it's pulling me away from the promise that I made to turn from all my old ways. I ran for as long as I can. I need you to bring me back again, 'cause only you can take what is broken, and make it new. When it feels can turn. There's nothing I can do. There's only you. There's only you. Only you can take what is broken and make it new. When it feels this hopeless, there's nowhere else that I can turn. There's nothing I can do. There's only you. Only